Well, let's talk now to President of the Asia think tank and Asia specialist, in fact, at Paris Dauphine University, Jean-François Di Meglio. Thanks very much for being with us on the programme. It's a very risky trip, this, isn't it, for Nancy Pelosi? I mean, there are real fears it could backfire?
Well, the risk, I would say, is rather on the China side, because there is a risk of, if I could say so, losing face. Actually, China's voice has been raised so high that as compared to the threats that China has expressed, where the risk of losing face is much bigger than any risk run by Nancy Pelosi. After all, Nancy Pelosi has been protected by the US warplanes, which accompanied her to land in Taiwan. She landed safely in Taiwan, and there is basically no downside for Nancy Pelosi herself. Remember, Nancy Pelosi is the representative, Speaker of the House of Representatives, so she's on the legislative side. US, like our democracies, are divided into an executive power, legislative power, and they are separate, as opposed to what's happening in China, where you have the executive, legislative, all combined in one people's hand. And if Nancy Pelosi goes, there is no official involvement of the US president.
So you don't think then that China could hit back in other ways?
Side.
You don't think then that China could hit back in other ways? I mean, they might not be able to do anything directly about Nancy Pelosi's visit, but already there are talks of more military manoeuvres, potential economic repercussions too?
Well, the downside on the economic side for the US is very limited, because the implication on the economic side between US and China are so strong that you cannot backpedal right away overnight. Of course, China still buys US treasuries, as we all know, less and less, but China still buys US treasuries. US still buy Chinese goods, and actually a Chinese trade surplus has never been so high, and China has never depended so much on the trade surplus, because China's economy is slowing down tremendously and depends much more than in the past on its trade surplus. The only engine which still works in China is the trade. So basically, the risk is on China's side.
And you don't think there'll be any increase in military activity, for example, from the Chinese?
Of course there will. Of course there will. I don't believe at this stage that there will be any escalation leading to a really incident or crisis. China and the Chinese president, they are just doing their job. Of course, they are threatening. It's their logics, because they are upgrading their threats to Taiwan more and more every year. They started 2-3 years ago. Of course, this is their obsession from ever. And 2024 will be a very important year, because we have a presidential election in Taiwan. So they have to warm up to find out what they will do against Taiwan when the next presidential election happens. It might be soft influencing the election. It might be harsh influence. It might be military plans. But at this stage, I do not believe that any strong action, but the threats that we are currently witnessing, is possible from the Chinese side.
Good to talk to you today. Thanks very much for being with us on the programme. That's Jean-François Di Meglio joining us from Paris Dauphine University from the Asia think tank. Thanks.